Okay.
Got it. Oh, my alarm just went off to tell me we're at the top of the hour. Today's topic is one that I chose mainly because it's been something that's been coming up in conversation a lot. It's something that I've been getting asked a lot of questions about, and then a few other experienced callers have also apparently been getting the same types of questions. And although it's geared for new callers, it's coming up more and more because we haven't had a lot of people dancing in a while, and there's a lot of things that we call, oh, this is a really solid group of dancers we call, and we're setting them up, at least in my opinion, the dancers to fail. And the question is, why are we doing this? And to understand why are we doing this, it's not intentional, but what are we actually doing that's causing this? So I figured I'd explore that a little bit and see where we go with that. And I'm just letting a couple more people in the room, and we'll get started. So I'm just going to put my slide up here. And once again, if you have any questions or anything else that's coming, by all means, feel free to interrupt when we go, or put a message in the chat and away you go. If you'd like to record, just send Mark a message, because once I start, I can't see anybody. So if you do want to interrupt, or you have something pointing on what's being discussed at the moment, just unmute yourself and shout out, and we can stop and have a look at it. So I'm just going to share my screen here. Can you guys all see that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So what we're looking at is, this is a common question. Why can't they just do it? And it was geared initially for new callers. I gave this presentation a while ago, and it's based on a survey I did and just sent out around the world at the time while I was still living in Canada. But the messages I got are still going on today. Come on, there we go. So we as callers know that the first rule of square dancing from a caller's perspective should always be the dancers come first. That's our job. You know, we're there to entertain, to give them a fun time, to give them a memorable experience that we can repeat so that they want to come back and do it. Our job as callers is not to be the best choreographer in the world, or the best singer, or the most technically correct person, the one that's able to push the boundaries into DVD the furthest, or the one who never makes mistakes. That is not our job. That has never been our job. Ideally, a lot of that capability develops in time with practice and experience, to where we will become the best caller that we as an individual can be. And while we may never be the best at everything or any one thing, once you're able to give the dancers a memorable and enjoyable experience through that medium of square dancing, in my book, you're already one of the best callers in the world. If your dancers want to come and dance to you, you're already doing it right. And that's where you have to look at, is the dancers come first. And if you're giving them fun, entertaining, a memorable experience that they want to come back and dance to you and have more fun, you are already, in my opinion, one of the best callers in the world. Now, there's very few callers I've met that have stated anything else to the contrary. Unfortunately, it's a concept that many today still give lip service rather than real service to. And by this, I mean, there's many callers today that still try to be the most clever, or to show what they can do, or they want to prove themselves to other callers, or any of those myriad of excuses that they have to try and be a better caller. And by doing that, what they're doing is actually setting the dancers up to fail. And this is why we keep the old tried and true, I want to have the tricky stuff, and we're not keeping a lot of newer dancers, because we're setting them up to fail. To be a truly good caller, you require a number of skills. There's no argument about that. Well, what I found interesting, and this is one of the surveys I did, when I asked a number of very experienced callers to give me the 5 most important skills of being a successful caller, most of them gave me the same answers in the same general order. There was a bit of variance, but it was the same top 5. And that was first, to be an entertainer. You've got to entertain the dancers. You've got to have good judgment. You got to know what to call, when to call, what not to call, when not to call it, and how to, you know, what you can and what you can't say. Yes, you do have to have technical skills. You have to have the basic foundation of technical skills. You got to have soft skills, and you've got to be a teacher and a choreographer, but to a lesser degree. The strange thing is, when the question was posed to a lot of new and newer callers, that's 10 years or less experience, similar answers, but the order was very different. And one is a good knowledge of the definitions. You know, you got to have the technical skills, how to resolve a square, how to move the dancers, formation management, all that. You've got to be a good choreographer. You've got to put all this stuff together. You've got to do that. You've got to be a good singer. You've got to be a good entertainer and teacher. Now, both of those are there. Entertainer and teacher ranked pretty much the same, whereas teacher and choreographer ranked pretty much the same with the experienced callers. Now, I'm only going to cap, there was a lot more things, of course, but I'm only going to talk about those specific things. So when you look at it like the experienced caller, when you talk to technical skills, that's a basic foundation of formation management, movement mechanics, timing, lead command timing, and knowledge of the definitions, sight calling, resolution. That's what they call technical skills. And you needed a basic foundation understanding of that to be a good caller. You didn't need to be the best at everything. You didn't need to have all those skills. That will come in time. But you needed good judgment, and you needed to be able to entertain an audience. And that's showmanship. Those are things. You also needed soft skills. And by soft skills, I talk about you know, being able to greet, being able to have a communication with the dancers, to being able to build rapport, all of those other kinds of things. But for newer callers, it really struck me that knowing the definitions and technical skills, sight calling, resolution, movement mechanics, formation management, those ranked right up at number one pretty much equally as what you need to be a good caller. And it's just not true. It was interesting to see that most very successful club callers, national and traveling callers, say that the two top skills that a caller should have is one, to be an entertainer, and two, to have good judgment. The rest of the technical things are more tools of the trade that a caller needs to have a basic understanding of and to continue to improve on and always get better and maybe even one day master. Most of those have said that while they may be good at their craft, they will never master everything, and all they can do is hope to get better and better and better with the dancers. And you know, and you can talk to guys like Tony Oxendine, to Bob Elling. Bob Elling, his dancers rate him as, you know, love to dance to him. But even Bob will tell you that, you know, his goal is to get better than he was last time. Very few have said, well, not, let's put it this way. A few of these callers have even said that some of the greatest callers they ever knew and that they looked up to were not all that technical, were not even great at choreography, but they knew how to play a floor and they knew how to entertain a hall full of people night after night so that those dancers would want to come back and have that experience. And that is the big thing that you have to remember. You're selling an experience. So we talk about options. This seems to be a very, very sharp contrast of many new callers. Instead, the focus is on the technical capability, and I'm on the wrong slide, there we are, to move the dancers to resolve, to sight call, be able to present challenging choreography, because that's what the dancers want, so that the dancers can get the better. I find it very strange that the priority perception of new callers is what's being taught to a lot of new callers, and that's to focus on skills that impress the teacher and not the dancer. In other words, in my opinion, that focus is in completely the wrong place. Technical skills are essential, but they're not necessary to be a master, and it's not necessary to have every technical skill to be a great caller. It's true you have to have the understanding of formation management, timing, what choreography does, how to put it together. But I can guarantee you that a hall full of dancers is having a good time and being entertained with just a little bit of variety, feeling challenged, but successfully winning against that challenge will come back to your dancers, and they're going to bring friends much more than those that acknowledge the difficulty. And then they look at the choreography and they look at the challenge and they succeed, but you know, they're not really having a good time. Fun, not fancy, is always going to be successful to the entertainer. And that's our primary function as a caller, is to entertain the dancers. The choreographic skills are only the medium. So if you think of it this way, I always use a building that I found in Perth, Ontario. It is one that they bring engineers out. It was built about 250 years ago. It's solid stone. Its walls are perfectly square. It is absolutely straight, vertical, lined, and the whole building is square. And it was made with a plumb bob. Now you can do that, you know, a $5 weight today, a string and 2 sticks, or you can get one of those $100,000 laser survey levels and a university degree on how to use it and still not make as good a building. Well, that type of thing applies to calling. You can call a great basic dance with simple variety and entertain a hall that wants to come back for more, or you can use those movements in a way that's right, but just about impossible to dance without workshopping everything and conducting a theological seminary at the end of every movement. You may be technically correct as the caller, but just ask yourself, which dance would you prefer to go to as a dancer? So what this tells me is we're often setting our dancers up and our new callers up to fail. And it's most evident in the fact that entertainment and fun was so low on the list of skill sets for newer callers, and that entertaining was equated to being able to sing. You know, one of the best callers I know and the best entertainers I know could not sing at all, and he admitted it, but he was a great caller. Good judgment. And yes, good judgment is a learned skill. It wasn't on the list. Where are we here? Anyway, I'm on a slide off. Sorry about that. Okay, good judgment is a learned skill. It was not even on the list for many of the new callers as a learned skill, and neither were soft skills. You know, that's your personability, your ability to listen and converse and socialize and all that kind of stuff. As a note in the list of technical skills, the most really experienced callers lump these things together in a category to learn and build on as a collective entity. That's your technical skills. Most, but not all, newer callers claim to be taught that these are individual things that have to be mastered before you can be a good caller. And it's just not true. Okay. Once you get that ability to move dancers around, that's where you want to start working on your presentation skills, your use skills. It's in this thought process that we're delivering that we get to the meat of this discussion, or if you're a vegan, the beans of this discussion. Why are we so often setting up the dancers to fail? And why are we setting up new callers to fail? Especially when we're so desperate to keep both new dancers and new callers. And yet we do it all the time. And the answer is because we're teaching them to focus on themselves rather than the dancers. So the answer, of course, lies in these two categories. First, being an entertainer. It's all about the show. It's all about the music and the technical skills. Well, it's not. It's all about the ability to deliver a product. And while it's necessary to have a basic skill foundation on how to move the dancers and an idea of timing and a very basic set of skills, this does not prevent you as a caller from being an excellent entertainer. And that's what it is. You're entertaining through the medium of your dance. The second is good judgment. This one only came up with every really good caller as number one or number two on their list. And it was before technical skills. Having good judgment is a skill that you must master. I must add, however, that good judgment has been learned by many through making mistakes. And the skill is usually developed through the medium of using bad judgment and living with the consequences. And that's why it's probably so high on the list. You've got to remember that good judgment, or rather the lack of good judgment, is primarily the reason why we as callers set the dancers up to fail. We made a mistake in judging what we were going to do. And it doesn't matter if you're a brand new caller or a very experienced caller, that ability to entertain the dancers and have them wanting to get up and dance to you while you're there because it's fun to do so is something that happens very rarely by accident. Most often it's because of the application of good judgment, which comes from experience. However, experience is not always available. So there are some good judgment guidelines, that's what I call them, that can help newer callers that haven't got that experience give a better performance and enhance that dancing experience for the dancers. These are some of the things that I'd like to explore in this session, and then I'm going to open the floor up to experience some sharing, some of the good things that you found, some of the bad things, so we can all take away a little bit of something from this presentation. So what I've done is I've lumped this into the top 10 categories of why we ensure our dancers fail. The first one is, especially for new callers, is trying to show how good and clever we are. We're trying to impress our mentor. We're trying to impress the callers with our written material that we've got something and we can do this and we can do this. Guess what? If you're a new caller or you even an experienced caller and you're on a new floor, if you're trying to show how clever you are, you're setting not only the dancers up, but yourself to fail. Having innovative technical choreography that knows, you know, it works. You've run it through Taminations, you've run it through your checkers and everything else, and you would love to dance that material. That equals fail. Really clever get outs and all at home resolutions. Here's a secret. Yeah, it's nice to resolve the home, but if you resolve the home every time, dancers don't like it. They need to have the reward of the right and left grand, or they need to have the reward, even if it's a 1/4 promenade, they need that reward. But if everything is march, march, march or home, march, march, march or home, march, march, march or home, it's not there. Newer callers, fractionalized calls are a danger. If you go beyond the ladies chain 3/4, heads promenade, halfway, cast off 3/4, or those that have that fraction built into them, and you start doing things like do side o 1.5 or half sachet 1.5, you're going to fail, especially if you're a new caller, and I'll get to why. Trying too hard to impress. The question is, who are you trying to impress there? You want to show off your knowledge? Absolutely. You want to show off that you're a good caller? Absolutely. But if you try too hard, think of it as a 16-year-old boy trying to ask a girl to the prom, trying way too hard to impress. That's what you are like as a new caller, or a 16-year-old girl trying to ask a boy to the prom. That's what you are like as a new caller. And if you try too hard, you fail. One of the biggest mistakes new callers make is they pick up the most current and upbeat, wow, funky music that they, you know, that's out there. It's a fail. As a new caller, calling your very best stuff right off. You're opening up and you're going to give them a wow. You want to grab those dancers and pull them in to show how smart you are. You're going to fail because the dancers don't have time to adapt. Calling for the callers and not for the dancers. You get into a hall and you've got Betsy Gotta and Tony Oxendine and Bob Elling and you know, all these wow big names, and Daryl Clinton, all these people that know, and you start calling and you want to impress them. Guess what? They're not going to be impressed at all if your material is absolutely fantastic and danceable, but none of the dancers are able to do it because you know it works and it's technical and it's fancy and it's got so much stuff in it. You're calling for them. You're not calling for the dancers on the floor. Number 9 you see is bold. Everything that's up there above that is part of number 9. Not recognizing that confidence is a two-way street. The dancers have to have confidence in you, and you have to have confidence in yourself. And if it's not a two-way street, you've already set yourself up to fail. And this one was on the list. That's trying to be someone else. There's nothing worse than a caller getting up and, hey, you know, there's Brian. Hey, he did a good job. I'm going to do Brian Taylor's job. I'm going to do, you know, I'm going to pretend I'm Shauna Carrera or somebody like that, and I'm going to call the way they call. Well, if they wanted that person, they would have hired that person. You know, they hired me, or I'm the one calling. I want them to know me for who I am. I don't want to be someone else. So what I want you to take away from this is, as a new caller, all of these frustrations and failures can be overcome by one thing, and that's good judgment. But you've got to remember, good judgment comes from experience, and experience comes from bad judgment. You are going to make mistakes. All of these top 10 failures could have easily been avoided with that good judgment. But it's something that can only be learned, and it's self-learned. I can't teach you good judgment. I can guide you with some of the things that I've learned, as can many of the other callers here. But if you take away that failure doesn't mean I'm bad, it means that's your first attempt in learning. It's something you did, something went wrong. I can do something. I can live with that. I can deal with that. So what I've done is I've broken it up into 4 areas of judgment, if you will. And that's, one is entertainment, calling fundamentals, relationship building or rapport with the dancers, and being yourself. If you can get good judgment within those 4 things, chances are you're well on your way to being a good caller. And that's what I want to look at. These are not, I can't teach them, but they're just some general guidelines that have helped me. So we'll start with entertainment. Okay, you're there to give the dancers a good time through the medium of square dancing. It's all about the dancers. There's nothing else there. So you got to know your soft skills. You've got to be sociable off the mic, and for God's sake, smile and talk to the dancers. The stage is essentially a pedestal. You got to come off that pedestal and get real to the dancers. Otherwise, you're just a concert. And what do people do at the concert? They sit in a chair and listen. You don't want them sitting, you want them dancing. Don't talk about doing something, do it. Okay, you're there to call, not to talk about a record or the music choice or the choreography or the computer. Be prepared and be ready to call. Don't get on stage when you're not ready. Be ready when you get there. How many times have you gone up and there's a new call? Oh, I just got this record and I've been practicing it for about 2 weeks, okay, and I've been working really, really hard, and they give this long story for about 3 minutes about the music and the record and everything else because they're nervous. Don't do it. Don't talk about it. Just get up there and call. A big mistake that a lot of new callers make is they apologize beforehand. And it's too often, hi, I'm Mel Wilkerson. I'm just learning to call, so bear with me. I don't always get you home, so forgive me, blah, 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 blah. And they go on about how bad they are. What you're saying to the dancers, hi, my name's Mel. I'm not ready to call. I'm not a good caller. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm going to make a bad job of this, and you will not enjoy my calling. Okay, that's what you're saying if you apologize beforehand. Okay? The dancers already know you're new or you're new to them. And they're going to be a lot more forgiving if you try and you have problems rather than if you set their expectations low and then you work really, really hard not to meet the expectations that you've set. Okay? Just get up there and do your best. That's what they're there. You've also remembered you're the show. Your music is not the show. Your choreography is not the show. They're a small part of it. Putting on some really hard-hitting blues or jazz or funky new pop rock with hip hop and crazy modern melody, or doing one of those fancy rap songs as a brand new caller does absolutely nothing to ingratiate you to the dancers. In most cases, it turns the focus away from you to the music. And because of that, you're not going to be successful with what you want to do. What happened there? I don't know what happened there. Anyway. Okay. What you do want to do is you want to pick something with a good beat and a nice melody line and something that you can deliver. Okay. Your choreography needs to be, it's a medium to achieve success. Okay. And you want smooth movement and activity from the dancers. So you've got to find that happy medium for success. If you make it too plain, it means you're not trying. If you make it too funky or out in left field, it means you're trying too hard to be clever. You will lose dancers' goodwill with either. If you not enough or too much, the dancer's goodwill is gone. Forget it. You'll never get it back. But if you deliver a smooth set of sequences that moves the dancers around the square and has just a little bit of variety, it's well loved by all. I can tell you right now, the dancers will not remember your choreography, only that they succeeded at doing it. If they don't succeed, they will remember your choreography and thus remember you for all the wrong reasons. And lastly, in entertainment is your performance and presentation skills. The stage is your presence, your command of the movements, your control of the floor, your timing, and the fun in tone and intonation of your voice, as well as the delivery of smooth dancing. That's what the dancers will remember. That whole presentation and performance is what they remember. You are the performance. You are the show. Not your music, not your choreography. You. It's all one package, and it's all or nothing. The second one is basic calling fundamentals. Every experienced caller I've talked to, and we've had it here a number of times in some of the sessions where we explore like something like foundation modules in depth, and we spent 6 sessions just dealing with basic modules. Okay, they all say the same thing. When you're starting, keep it simple, start small, and build on what you know. It is imperative to have a basic fundamental knowledge of the understanding of what the movements do. You need to understand what the basic movement of it, or what the basic definition of a movement is and what it does, where it starts, where it finishes. Okay? You don't have to know 800,000 ways of using that, but you have to have a good solid foundation of what it is and what it does. Similarly, your movement mechanics. Is it right hand, left hand? Is it working? Are you working up and down the grid with these moves? What do they actually do? Okay. You need to have a basic knowledge of formation management and a basic ability to recognize formations. That's not all these weird and wonderful inverted diamond galaxy with a far off left-handed meat, whatever the heck they are. But you need to understand what a line is, what a box is, what an 8-chain-4 is, a double pass-through, your basic formations, and what is standard and what is half sachet. Once you get past that, and you understand that, you can call, and you can be a fantastic caller. And I know a lot of really, really good callers that never took their knowledge of formation management beyond that, because they can get out and they can get back into something they know. And you do need one simple resolution to fall back on, okay? We had a session where I equated that to that little tiny spare tire that you've got in your car. You bring it out, you check it, you make sure it's pumped up, you make sure it works, it fits on the car, you know how to change the tire, and then you put it back in the trunk and you hope you never use it, because everything else is in your head with either modules or a technique that you can have to resolve, or you're using mental image, whatever it is you're using. But every now and then something's going to happen that you get lost. You need that one simple resolution. Once you have that one and it's yours, then you can start building on other things. And you can start adding to that repertoire. You also need an understanding of modules, okay? You need to prepare some focus modules for your tip. Now, for me, I like two things that I will prepare before every tip is a corner box to corner box module and a partner line to partner line module. With those two modules and the 6 foundation modules, that's your 0 people mover from a box, that's your 0 people mover from a line, that's your partner line to corner box to partner line, your magic module, and your invert and rotate module, and your chicken plucker. With those 6 modules, those are your 6 foundation modules. Once you have those, one corner box, one partner line module that's focused on what the theme of your tip is, you will run out of music long before you run out of, long before you run out of choreography. So you don't need to have hundreds and hundreds of thousands of modules written out. You want your guest tip, you want to keep short, you want to keep it simple. Don't get into weird and wonderful. The main goal here is to move the dancers around smoothly and comfortably with nice flow and timing. Prepared and practice smooth, simple modules that are focused and work. Clever will never cut it, especially for a new caller. Okay, don't get into the technical DBD, asymmetric, or even fractionalized calls beyond those stated, you know, like the ladies chain 3/4. Okay, you're there to give a good solid dance or a good solid tip. As a guest caller or a guest tip, you want to keep it simple. You want to keep it fun. This, of course, does change if you're running a club and you're doing a workshop, or you have specifics that are prepared with the goal, you have specific tasks, but you modify it accordingly using these principles. Dancers need to get to know you first, okay? And I say this, confidence and trust is earned. It's not given to you, it's earned, especially from the new caller. Confidence comes from preparation and practice. This is your confidence. And it comes from review and more practice. So you've got to be really, really honest with yourself. If you've done your homework and your preparation, you know your material, you practice it, and you're confident with it, great, be confident. But if you don't have that confidence in yourself, no one else is going to have confidence in you. And that lack of confidence comes through the microphone. It's then transmitted to the dancers who are not confident dancing to you because they feel that you're not confident. And what happens is they will, not may, they will start second guessing what they think you want rather than what you actually wanted, or what they think you wanted to call rather than what you actually called. Similarly, being confident means that you're confident enough to get up and call good, solid, fundamental flowing choreography that is danceable without getting very fancy or clever, because no dancer on the floor is going to be impressed by an unknown quantity, you as a new caller, getting up behind a microphone and calling sequences like this. Now, this is from an actual dance. The group was a plus and mainstream. They did a lot of DBD, 8 solid squares of dancing on the floor, and this was a new caller. And he worked his material, and here's the material, so let's just have a look at that, okay? Heads, left touch a quarter, head girl run, there's my corner box, slide through, right and left through, half sachet, not a problem. Touch a quarter, circulate twice. Zoom once and a half to an Allemande left. And it was a right and left grand, which, but anyway, the next one was heads, touch a quarter, just the centers, walk and dodge. Veer to the right, boys trade, Ferris wheel. All this flows quite well. Veer to the right, boys pass through, centers left swing through, while the outsides trade. Girls, or sorry, while the girls, that pass through, sorry, getting while the outsides trade and pass through to a right and left grand. So very quickly, where do you see problems with this? And remember, this is a group that is dynamic. They dance DBD. The caller works this stuff. They've danced this kind of material all the time. Anybody? Anybody still here?
Is it timing?
Part of it.
Delivery?
And it,
Sorry? What do you
Delivery.
mean by
Delivering the bolts.
yeah, the delivery? Some of it is, some of it isn't. Like for instance, this circulate twice up to here, heads left touch a quarter, girls run, okay, left touch a quarter, bit interesting, not a problem. Slide through right and left through, not a problem. Half sachet, yep, not a problem. Touch a quarter, circulate once and a half, zoom once and a half to an Allemande left. There was a breakdown. And yet they do touch a quarter, zoom, touch a quarter, circulate, zoom, touch a quarter, circulate twice, zoom once and a half from left hand, right hand columns all the time. That was a timing and delivery issue where it was zoom once and a half to an Allemande left. He just said zoom once and a half.
Well, there's also a body flow issue because the circulate goes in another direction than the zoom.
Actually, I would disagree with that because the people coming out are going forward, and you want to put a circulate with a zoom, and the rest.
Yeah, but they expect to get around the corner just like the one before.
Yeah. and that actually flows quite well into the Allemande left. But what you hit was absolutely correct. It's the expectation. In the second part, again, it's part of the delivery. Heads touch a quarter, centers walk and dodge. Okay, veer right. That was called static. That was just a timing issue, not a big problem. Boys trade, absolutely no problem with that. Ferris wheel and veer right, not a problem. Here's where problems start. This was the first breakdown. Boys pass through. Okay, now who's going to pass through? The center boys or these boys? As a caller, we think, well, it would be the boys that are facing because it's a right shoulder pass. This is left shoulder. From the dancers, veer right and boys pass through. Well, they did the pass through. Well, two of the squares did the pass through before they finished the veer right. Then it was facing boys pass through could have solved a lot of that. Centers left swing through, and then he called girls trade. Girls pass through, and it had exactly the same thing happen. Because here, girls pass through. Which girls? Was it the center girls? Because he called girls trade and girls pass through. Wheel and deal, outside trade, centers pass through. And all of that is really not that difficult. The dancers do it all the time. So why did this caller have trouble with a group that regularly dances this type of material? From my point of view, no matter how good or clever your choreography is, or how well it works, or how familiar the dancer is with it, you as a new caller, or you as a caller that's new to the dancer, are an unknown.
Hey, Chris, just start talking. He can't see your hand up.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I was just going to say on the just to comment further on the difficulty and that breakdown with that Ferris wheel and voice pass through. The thing that we're always doing, maybe new callers don't know this or quite realize it, but the thing that we're always doing with choreography is we're constantly shifting the dancer's focus. What are they looking at? You know, what's in front of them, beside them, wherever. And that has to do with what kind of things that dancer at that ability level is used to in terms of how, how aware they are of formations and so forth. But even when they're acutely, super good challenge dancers, the the whole game is shifting their focus to different things around the square. So in this case, you have the boys coming together on that Ferris wheel, and the timing thing that Mel was talking about is that if you say that just a little bit too early, like we're talking about split seconds here, it's very, very subtle timing. It's the same kind of subtlety in timing that a jazz drummer has. It's millisecond kind of differences. For a moment there, they're looking at each other coming in doing that Ferris wheel, and the boys see they're coming up on each other and they're looking to hook up. And if you say, boys pass through when they're still in that frame of mind, as opposed to a third of a second later when they've established the formation and they start looking at the people in front of them, that's the problem right there. So so some of this stuff is super nuanced, and so to manage the difficulty, you've got to kind of learn to appreciate those nuances and try to get inside the head of the dancer, and realize also that different dancers on the floor are not necessarily all going to be at the same response level or whatever, or however you want to put it.
Absolutely, Chris. Absolutely.
So anyway, I just wanted to clarify on that.
One of the things that happened here is, and what you're saying, like boys pass through, adding the word facing, after the veer to right and the facing boys pass through, that would have made all the difference. The same with the girls, and the facing girls pass through even more so, because the girls are in a right hand wave and they're coming
Or
off a
all.
pass through, or all the boys, anything like that is a little prompt. But all of those, the thing that this caller had a problem with is this is a very, very solid mainstream group, and I mean mainstream DBD to the nth degree, and a plus group, and they're good, solid dancers. Why did this caller have problems? Because this is material, and much, much harder material, that their caller calls all the time. What I got is, no matter how clever the choreography, how well it works, if the dancers don't know you because you're new to them, they will not have the confidence in you to go into those technical abstracts. Even if your previous caller did the same thing, or the same material, which is, and even harder material, that person that was calling before you, or that person that calls there regularly, has earned their confidence. You have not earned their confidence. They're looking for something. You're a new caller. What is this abstract stuff he's calling? It probably means that. And there's been actually several chats in Facebook on some of the streams lately. I called do-si-do once and a half, and I expected the boys to be in the lead for a double passer. Well, yeah, you called do-si-do once and a half, but you meant to call half sachet once and a half. And there's all sorts of examples like these kinds of things that are happening. And what happens, I didn't find that part of the discussion was really bad. That's a simple mistake. What I found was the massive discussion that went into after the fact, saying, well, what you can do instead of what you can do here, try this, try this, try this, instead of, don't try and impress other callers with your knowledge. Give the dancers something they can dance to.
It's not even I'm trying to impress. A lot of times it's the new callers are also trying to impress the dancers. Look how clever my choreography is. And that's almost as bad.
Yeah, that's where I was going next.
Yeah.
So when we talk about getting to know you, it's important that you as a caller introduce yourself to the dancers. Now, this doesn't mean getting off the stage and saying, hi, my name's Mel, and so on. What it means is, as a new caller or a caller that's new to the dancers, regardless of your experience, you have to introduce them to you, to your voice, to your style, to your delivery method, your pace, and in many cases, like mine, your accent, so that they can dance to you. If any of you have ever gone to a dance from Newfoundland, and then you go to a dance in, say, South Texas, well, Newfoundland are going, well, the head square through, and when you get there, by you want to get there for, and go do-si-do. And you get to Texas, well, you all square through now. Totally different. I'm really hyper extending the stereotypes on that. But think about this from different languages. Think about somebody from Japan dancing to somebody from the Czech Republic to a Texas caller. You know, accents are all the way we phrase, the way we do things, the speed at which we do things. I recommend that as a new caller or even an experienced caller doing a guest tip, you follow a 3-sequence guideline. This is what I call, this is what's given to me, and it works very well. This begins by choosing, first and foremost, you got to choose a singing call that you're going to use in your presentation. Now, for the sake of argument, let's say I was a new caller asked to call up for a solid mainstream group. My mentor or the person that asked me to call said, right, I want you to do a tip and focus on the movement cloverleaf. Okay, that's fine. I'm at that point where he's ready for me to do a focus movement, not just move the dancers. What you do is up to you. What I like to do is something that is focus my theme chosen from my singing call figure. And in this case, let's look at the figure itself. So the figure itself would be head square through, do a do, side do, swing through, boys run, tag the line, cloverleaf, girls square through 3, swing your corner and promenade. Standard figure. It's been in a lot of singing calls. It's great. It's got a cloverleaf. It's got some nice flowing choreography and it flows well. Okay. So what I do is I would prepare my focus tip. My first sequence is found on my singing call. Hang on, am I on? Okay, right. Okay, so my focus theme, that grounds me to the dancers. Okay, but when I do that, I want to have, let's say, I don't know, let's change this just for the sake of art. Head square through, split the outside 2, outside separate, pass through, tag the line, cloverleaf, double pass through, face in, slide through, swing the corner. There. I've now changed my singing call figure. I've got a singing call figure. It's not difficult. I know the dancers can do it. It's great. Now I'm going to prepare my pattern. My first sequence is going to be relatively easy. It's going to be a smooth and danceable figure from start to finish. I like to start with a circle figure. This is where you're able to emphasize your calls, how you call, how you say it, your diction, your enunciation, your pronunciation, and allows you to add your patter fill so that the dancers can distinguish between your patter fill and your actual calling. And if you haven't developed patter fill, I suggest you avoid it until you get your calling down. That's the statement of the movements. It allows the dancers to tune into you and get the feeling of your voice, get the feeling of your style, and it also allows them to make up the minds that even if they want to listen to you at all or just go through the motions. So an example, something like all 4 ladies chain 3/4, roll away, circle to the left. Alaman left your corner, or even better, Alaman left in the Alamo style. Balance out and in a while, swing through, go 2 by 2, swing through one more time to the partner, right and left grand, every other girl by every other hand, meet your lady promenade. Something nice and simple. That's a circle movement. It's very hard to get lost on, but the dancers tune into your voice and they can hear what you're doing. The second sequence, I prepare a good, solid module sequence. It's relatively short. It's practiced by me beforehand. It's danceable. It uses the floor to get the dancers used to hearing you call patter. It also allows you to check the dancer's capability, but also earn their trust in you to build that confidence. So you do a nice, easy module. It would be short to the point, a short get in, if possible, tied to my theme. It wouldn't be long and convoluted string of patter that a lot of callers do. You know, they write out an entire page. It's going to be something that's maybe 10, 12 movements, no more. So I might do something like heads, pass through, and cloverleaf. New centers do the right and left through. No problem. Double pass through, everybody cloverleaf. Follow the leader. New centers, square through 3. Okay, I've got the cloverleaf, square through 3. That ties in with my singing call. I'm also in a corner box in case I've lost anybody. I know I'm there. And then I might finish it instead of an element left. I'm going to split the outside couple, separate around 1, join hands, circle left. That little bit of variety, guess what? Split the outside 2, separate around 1, join hands, circle left. We're in a circle. Everybody's squared up. It feels a little different, but the dancers are now have trust. They're successful, and they've had that little bit of variety. It also gives me as a caller the opportunity to observe the dancers, see who's with who, and I've left myself an option with that corner box. I can call the Alaman left if I've lost somebody. but I've also left myself open for that little bit of expansion into that circle left. I can reinforce my partner pairings in my mind. Meanwhile, what's happening is the dancers are building confidence. The third sequence is also a modular sequence. And that is a module which I use an affirmation for me to observe the dancers. It allows me to ensure that the key square that I've chosen is actually a viable key square. They just because they're all dressed fancy doesn't make their, and easy to remember, doesn't make them the best dancers. It reinforces the relationships in my mind and the sequence in my mind. And it gives the dancers the ability to move and use the floor, the whole floor, with comfort and trust. I like to prepare the modules beforehand. Others have different preferences. What works for you is right. Remember that. What is important, you find something that works for you and your dancers, and you start small and build from there. The format that I find that works for me is I do a static square to a corner box to a corner box module, corner box to partner line conversion, partner line to resolve. That's usually what I have. So I might have something like head star through, double pass through, cloverleaf, zoom, ooh, centers pass through. I'm now in a corner box. Pass to the center, double pass through, cloverleaf. Centers pass through. Okay, I'm back in my corner box. Here I would do my corner box to partner line, and I just use my normal magic module, swing through, girls circulate, boys trade. Instead of, the rest of it, I do spin the top, recycle right and left through. I'm in a partner line, something like that, something easy. Then I would do a resolve, pass through, tag the line, cloverleaf, zoom, and find your corner. Okay, you can't really fail because the centers are coming to their corner, the ends on the zoom are trailing, they're going to come right to their corner, and they get into that right and left grand. I've done the pass through, I've done the tag the line, cloverleaf for my singing call. I've tied it all together, and it's smooth, it's danceable, it's easy, and I've done get into a corner box where I can call an Allman left. I've done a corner box to a corner box, 5 movements where I can call an Allman left. I've done a magic module variation to a partner line where I can call a circle left or an Allman left. And then I've done a resolve, which is, I think, the long 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 movements, which takes me to, 4 movements, pass through, tag the line, cloverleaf, zoom, which takes me to my corner, another module. My longest module in there was 7 movements. Nice, short and simple. And at the end of each one of those, I had it. So whatever the sequences are, it's always best to keep your own application, your own capabilities, your application of those, figure out what they are and take it back a notch. Keep it simple and within what you believe to be within the capability of the dancers. Be prepared to modify it if you have to. The fourth sequence is where you get to play and learn. And I mean, you play and you learn. The dancers are going to be playing and dancing. Okay. Where the new caller begins, this is where the newer caller begins to expand their capabilities, but within reason. And this is only if you're comfortable and you're ready for that. If you're learning to sight resolve, for instance, then set yourself up to sight call a little bit and resolve with purpose. If you're a modular caller, then use your prepared modules as short building blocks and start doing corner box to corner box to partner line to corner box, element, whatever it is, however you want to do it. If you're just learning isolated sight, do your setup, do a 2 couple isolated sight, do a chicken plucker, do 2 couple isolated sight, bring it back. However you want to do it. This is where you get to play and you get to learn and you get to use the floor. But you start small and you build big. Okay, you got to remember there is no undo function for square dance call. Okay, dancers will provide immediate feedback to you, and if they're not happy, you're going to know it very quickly. Dancers are not programmed to respond. They react to what they think you want. And if what they think you want is not clear or doable, those gears are going to grind to a halt very, very quickly. Relationship building is the fourth one. Okay, you got to remember there is only one caller at a time. Doesn't matter. Everybody else, even the person you're sharing the stage with, if you're doing that, does not exist as a caller. They exist as dancers or observers, and everyone there is to enjoy the show and the dance. There's only one caller. And calling is all about rapport building, both on and off the microphone. You need to be part of their world. You need to be one of them, but also at the same time, you need to be the focus of their attention. You need to be the center of their attention. And it's a fine line to draw as a new caller. You want to meet them, you want to greet them, you want to socialize them, be dynamic and all that. But you don't want to overshadow whoever has the mic. When you're on the mic, you don't want anybody overshadowing you. It's an important skill and something that you have to be aware of at all times. And it's very important, however, to remember that when you're behind the mic, you are the show. You're the center of everybody's world in that hall. And your only focus is on giving them a good time. I say you're the god of the moment to those dancers. Okay, and no offense to anybody if that does, but that's essentially what it is. There are no other callers in the room. There's no outside stimulus to distract them. It's up to you what kind of microphone deity you want to be. It's therefore very important that you build a good relationship and you build rapport with your worshipers, or they're going to find a new deity to follow. It's that simple. You have to be able to communicate on and off the microphone, but your presence has to be dynamic. It has to be genuine. It can't be prescriptive or difficult. Okay. It doesn't matter if there's like, you're calling a dance and you've got Ken Ratusi and Don Beck and Daryl Clendennin and Tony Oxine and Betsy Gott and Ed Foote and any one of 1,000 other callers that you think may be better than you, or these big guns or these well-known names. The reality is, as soon as you pick up that microphone, they do not exist in your world or in the dancer's world while you're holding that microphone. You're not calling for those big guns, and you're not calling for yourself, at least I hope not. You're calling for the dancers and the dancers alone. And you are genuine, dynamic, fun, not prescriptive, not tricky, not clever. And the dancers are going to find that they enjoy your calling, and they enjoy you for the simple reason that your calling focus is in the right place and you're setting them up to win. So just remember, if you can focus on those 4 things and take that lesson away, you're going to win. Finding that right path to success is going to be difficult for each and every caller. So remember, if you put 2 callers in a room and you ask 1 question, you're going to get 5 answers. They're all going to be different. So you've got to find what's right for you. But what's important is you trust yourself enough to get up there and do it in the first place. And you've got to accept the fact that you are going to make mistakes, but hopefully you make it once. Or if you do make it twice, it's a little bit smaller the second time. That's what good judgment is all about. It's about making decisions in the best interest of what you're trying to achieve. And in square dancing, what you're trying to achieve is build pleasurable memories so that the dancers want more of. It makes it like square dance. That's why I put this picture. It makes it sound like square dancing is a drug and you're a drug dealer and you're trying to get them addicted. Well, that's a great analogy. Your job is to give the dancers a good time, fun, memorable experience where they succeed with the perception and the perception of that challenge, where in reality, there really isn't a lot of challenge that is actually presented. It's within the scope of their capability, not your capability, but they want it. They want more. And that's what you want to achieve. What's important is that good judgment is learned by making mistakes, and in fact, accept the fact that you're going to make them and accept the fact that you're going to learn from them. I look at it this way. If you get a caller that's going to be mentoring you or teaching you, and they say they never make mistakes, my judgment is to avoid that person because they're an idiot. Okay. A caller that says, I never make mistakes, I never do this, I call good, I'm perfect all the time, is only trying to improve or trying to impress themselves, and they're not trying to improve themselves. Because if you never make mistakes, you will never improve. All that person can teach you is how not to get any better and how to show off how clever you are. They cannot teach you how to call. They cannot teach you how to work a floor. Even if they make that, and they're great callers, but that's what they're teaching you, and they say, I never make mistakes, avoid them. They're not worth your time. You will never get any better listening to somebody like that. So it's been like I said, a rather in-depth session where a lot of this basically says it boils down to good judgment, but there's a lot of stuff in there. I cannot teach you good judgment. I can give you a few guidelines to help you. It's mainly for new callers, but everybody's got experiences, and I'd love to hear some of your experiences. So do we have anything in the chat? Nope, nothing in the chat. Do we have any comments, questions? Anybody got any experiences they want to share about a mistake they may have made or good advice they got?
Mel,
Yes, Nikki.
you said God of the moment.
Yes.
GOTM.
Oh, he misheard you. He thought you said totem or
Oh
something.
no,
no.
God of the moment.
Yeah, GOTM. That means that you are only that if you got them.
I never thought of that. Yeah. But I do think of that. It was actually one of the, I stole, is Betsy here today?
Yeah.
Hi, Betsy. I actually stole that from Betsy. It was an expression that very similar to that she used when she was giving a call or doing a color school down in Wollongong. And she said, when you're behind the mic, you're the only person that people should be focused on. But you should be focused on, you should not be focused on yourself. You're focused on everybody, but everybody should be focused on you. And it struck me that, you know, she's absolutely right. You are essentially the God of the moment. You're the person that everybody is following that command as if it was, you know, God's word. You're commanding them to do it, and they do it without hesitation because they're willing, you know, willing worshipers to you. As long as you hold that microphone. As soon as that microphone goes out, yeah, you know, your service is over. You're no longer the God of the moment. The next person is. But I stole that from her, and I thought that was such a poignant way of looking at it that it's absolutely true. Everybody is worshiping you, but you're worshiping everybody. You don't worship yourself ever. And sorry I stole your phrase, Betsy, but I thought it was great.
No problem. Chris.
Chris.
I just wanted to go back to that when you were talking about building the confidence and how important that is. That just cannot be overemphasized too much. And you gave excellent advice on that. In the very first one, you were talking about doing a very simple opening sequence, maybe with some circle choreography or something. And that's just not for new callers. You know, I've been doing this a long time, and so and a lot of the groups that I call for, I only call for them once a year, 2 times, 3 times a year, and so whenever I go to these different groups, the first words out of my mouth, the first sequence of the night, is always something really simple. I mean, they're thinking, oh, we got Chris Stacy, he's going to do creative choreography or whatever. But my first thing I want to do is I want us to come in the room, and I'm going to be like, I'm going to prove to you that you still remember how to square dance from last week or last month or whenever you were here, and that I can call you. This is just going to all go great. The very first thing I want to do is make sure that nobody's, you know, I want to instill that right away in them. And very often, the first sequence I'll call at a dance is circle left, Alaman left, right and left grand. Something like that. It's nothing, right? I mean, it's literally like the most nothing thing you could think of. You could maybe dress it up and do some more interesting stuff, but I do just that just to get everybody going. And you know, they hear the music, they hear what I sound like, you know, we're dancing, and I mean, immediately they're dancing, and it's a sequence that they can't screw up. and they're dancing, and they're right and left grinding right away. And you know, 30 seconds later, it's like, oh yeah, we're in a dance, and he's calling, and it's going to work. And you know, then I start in with, you know, a similar approach to what you were talking about with a different thing. But that's just not for beginners. That's everybody.
It is
forever.
And you can do all sorts of things in that opening circle movement, like join hands, circle left, circle to the right, go the other way back, drop your hands single file. Girl step out and take a backtrack twice around the outside. Okay, when was the last time you, as a caller outside of your basic club, have actually done something like that? Meet your partner, turn with a right arm turn, find the corner, Alaman left, and a right and left ground. It is something, it fills in that little bit of time, but it allows them to hear you, your voice, your music. And if your music is way out in left field, or your voice is so full of patter and it's so indistinguishable from your calling, the dancers are going to let you know right away by watching them. But they can't help but succeed on it, and it allows you to make little minute adjustments. That is the best advice I would ever give. And it's no fault or no accident that all the singing calls, even though the structure is opener, figure, break, figure, closer, that almost all of the singing calls start with an opener for that reason. One, to get you into the song. Two, to let the dancers hear you and move with something that's simple so that they can get used to hearing what you're going to do and differentiate your calling from the song you're doing. Absolutely correct. I've got Bill's hand up, and then I think Mickey, was your hand up or are you waving?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll go to Bill and then we'll go to Mickey and then to Bob.
Well, I wanted to expand on something you had mentioned when it came to a newer caller and the choreography that you were using that routine with the do-sa-do once and a half. And you made an indirect reference, and I can't help but think there was a situation that I heard about through another caller in the San Joaquin area of California. They had their fifth Saturday dance, and this newer caller, he called a routine, and he said, like, he posted about it, that he got his checkers and everything there. And I said, like I said to the guy, checkers are one thing. It's the two-legged ones that have a little bit of a different approach to it. Nevertheless, but he did something, according to the MC of that dance that I spoke to him later, the gentleman did something that is, to me, is just an absolute cardinal rule. Apparently the dancers were saying only two squares, but the dancers were making comments about it. And one particular guy, I guess, was yelling, and the caller, he was arguing with him from the stage. You don't do that. And he kept telling the guy that, well, I did.
I had with Don. That was the session I had with Don last week about communication, what not to do.
But the guys, the caller or the dancer was saying something about that there, and the caller was insinuating. He said, "Well, I'm right. You're wrong." And the caller, in a nutshell, the caller has been told by the rest of the members of that local caller association that he's not calling at any of their functions again. It's there. So, yep. If you want to discuss it with the dancer afterward between tips, that's one thing, but you don't argue from the stage.
That's actually not an uncommon occurrence. I've had similar things happen to me when I call something, and my approach is, "Oh, I'm sorry, I thought that would work. I didn't realize that would cause that. Thank you for bringing it to my attention." And I drop it, and then I go talk to him afterwards. Never get in an argument. It never shows your character, and that's something that comes with good judgment.
And the other thing is, I remember if something was happening with my choreography and things went, I had no trouble with just saying, "Whoops, my bad," and then let's go on.
Yep. It's a lot easier. I've got Mickey, you have a comment.
Yeah, I've got two things. One thing, Colin was very, very good. And I had talked with a bunch of old folks, as you would say, but more or less they were not old, but experienced, very experienced. And they said pretty much what I'm doing by instinct is that when doing a tip, and they start very easy off for a guest tip, and trying to read the floor is with circle left. And you see whether they move to the beat of the music, if they shuffle or if they don't walk or don't act the way, if they do the element left or they take the shortcuts, if they do the right and left grand, if they promenade. And by that, you already can tell how the floor is going to develop and how the floor is. And Absolutely. Then starting with an easy call, which is a square through four, swing through, boys trade, girls circulate, turn through to an element left. And if that works, you can call anything at that dance. And it was interesting how they built it up and how they argumented with those little calls to read the floor. And on color schools, the second thing is what you mentioned. There is always out of 10, at least one or two who will try to impress the other colors and the coaches or the mentors. If you tell them on the last night when we have a dance, keep it simple. You're new to the dancers, you will have success, but don't do anything fancy. There always will be one or two who will try to show off got something special prepared, and I bet you they always gonna blow the whole
25%
thing.
of the time it'll fail. Yeah.
It's always
And,
the
and that boils down to, it's not necessarily that the choreography was bad or anything else. It's the dancers don't have confidence in them yet because they didn't know. And what Mickey was saying about that
they're
first
nervous
tip,
they're nervous like hell and presenting, and so they're not so self-confident that they can convince the dancers to do and what they want.
Even if they're experienced callers and they're at a caller school, which happens quite a lot, they try to impress. And the dancers there are expecting new callers. They have not built, and you can build that rapport with your opener and your first figure. For me personally, I don't like to cite my very first figure. I like to do a nice short module. I've got about 6 or 7 modules that I use to just suss out the floor. They're usually ones that keep the pairings or keep those relationships together where I can see it and see how they dance. And absolutely correct. I've got Bob next and then Stephen. Bob.
Yeah, I like to reference to the calling the circular choreography to the beginning of it. To me, that is so important. Dancers learn your voice, your timing, and they're syncing each other. With circular choreography versus other choreography, everybody has to get the same size steps moving. Otherwise, you can't circle left and one person take big steps and one person takes small steps. They all have to average out their stride. And you create a feeling of flow, or what I do is I create a flow that dancers trust my choreography, how it's going to feel. And when I start getting into the modular choreography, I take that same flow with me. And I remember an experience where I had done a dance in Fresno, California. And this is way back. I forget what the quarterly was, but I wrote a figure to go with it called Turn the Boat, which was a load the boat with the centers doing a turning left through and a quarter more, establish that two-face line between two couples. And I used it, and it was very good. And I had a great dance that night. Dancers doing it. This new caller heard it, wrote down my choreography, and at the after party called the same thing and came up and said, "How come they could do it when you called it, but they couldn't do it when I called it?" You know, and there's this thing, and it's that thing, creating this trust and flow and confidence from the caller presenting the material, who understands it, who has a purpose in doing it, versus another caller just trying to copy what the other caller did. It's not going to work, folks. Not going to work.
Absolutely, Bob. And it's the difference, for instance, if you remember that zoom 1.5 in the first figure. Now that flows, it's a bit unexpected because of the way you're circulating and all that. But if you call zoom 1.5, chances are you're going to fail. But
I gotta laugh because I use it a lot.
But if you call zoom, go 1.5 from a new call, if dancers are used to it, you can call zoom 1.5 because they're used to it. But as a new caller, zoom 1.5 or do si do, go 1.5 more. You're facing out. Little things like that are key to success, where you can actually introduce something, because we all know do si do 1.5 is the same as calling pass-through. Use it a lot in singing calls just to fill in that extra couple of beats of music at the end, or what have you. But how you present it and all those other kinds of things, you've got to think. If it's not fractionalized and you're a new caller and new to the dancers, you want to make sure your delivery is perfect, that they will succeed, or you stay the heck away from it.
Yeah.
Excellent
On that zoom 1.5, I like to use a zoom 1.5 to that left-hand wave, but it's zoom 1.5 to a swing through and chain down the line.
Yeah.
It just, I like it.
In this case, it was a zoom 1.5 to an Alaman left. It was very hard to fail.
Yeah, but I use a left swing through chain down the line.
Dancers didn't have confidence. Steve.
Betsy wanted to say something.
The first caller who let me call, singing call, good friend of mine now. He gave me 2 things of advice, because he saw that my badge was bouncing off my chest. He said, nerves are a good thing. If somebody says they're not nervous, to some degree, they're lying.
I agree
and
with you.
and then he said, he said, don't worry about the BS, just get the calls. Meaning don't worry about getting the words of the song, get the all the calls in.
Yeah.
I agree with you. Like nerves, I am nervous every time I get behind the mic. And Betsy, remember the school in Wollongong, you could hear it. I don't know why. I'm used to, I've run so many caller school, but every time I get up to call a dance, I get those nerves. I'm at the point, if I don't have those nerves, I get worried. It's like I love jumping off a high diving board, but I feel that feeling, just I can't go back. That feeling is what I live for. And I always remember I had one dance I was filling in for Bob Moffat in Heidelberg. And I had worked and I prepared and I was ready and I had all my choreography prepared. It was all modular. I had an entire evening worth of choreography practically memorized. And I worked for, I think, about 3 months getting ready for this dance. And I got up there and I called. I didn't make mistakes. The dancers weren't breaking down. They were great. But it was the most feelingless dance coming off the floor. They, thank me, I'll thank you, good time. I never actually got asked back to call there. They came to my dances after, but I never got asked back to call there, mainly because I wasn't nervous, but I also I was so confident in my material that it worked and it was clever and it was at their ability, but there was nothing in it. I was delivering good sound choreography, but I wasn't a show. I may as well put on a tape and let them dance to tape, because that's what it felt like, and that's how they responded to it. They're not going to applaud for somebody pushing the play button on a cassette recorder. That's what happened. Nerves are a good thing. They let you know you're alive and they keep you on your toes. So absolutely fantastic comment. I'm always nervous. Betsy, you had a comment.
Yeah, you were asking about mistakes that we learned from and talking about arguments from the floor to the caller. Back somewhere in the 80s, I was calling a dance. It was a dance that the association sponsored for recent graduates. And I did something that was really an extended application, which probably I should not have done, but I was much younger then and did not have the same amount of judgment. And this lady, and I was on a little stage, a 2-foot stage, so I was within reach of the front squares of dancers. So I called whatever it was. I lost a good half of the floor, if not more. And the woman in a square right in front of me started grabbing, she grabbed my skirt and started pulling and yelling, "You can't do that. You can't do that." And first I wanted to make sure I stayed dressed. I wasn't going to argue a lot, but I said, "Excuse me, ma'am, just let me get out of this and we'll go back over things." And that was how I got out of it. But it was a mistake to do something for recent graduates that was not standard application.
Absolutely. You actually mentioned something that I see quite a lot. Newer callers, especially at the club level, if you're learning, you can get away with it if you've been asked to do something like this. But I have seen this a number of times. I'm calling in something, and I don't know if anybody remembers the movement clover flow. You got one couple things.
Yeah.
Okay, so one couple clover leads and pass through, the other couple pass through and clover leads. So let's just say, for example, I'm going to call that, and it was on the program way back then. I call, heads pass through clover flow, and away we go. And I'm a brand new caller. Well, that was my first mistake, calling something that wasn't on the program, something the dancers were expecting. But then I compound my mistakes. Say, oh, let me just walk you through that.
Oops.
As a new caller doing a new tip, there are no undos. You see this all the time where I made a mistake. Well, let me just start over. There are no start overs. Pick up and carry on. Dancers will respect you a lot more for that than putting the record back at the start, especially on the pattern. And never do a workshop walkthrough unless you've been asked to do that specifically. If it doesn't work, get out of there and leave it the hell alone. Call something different. Take it down. They're just common mistakes. I have made that mistake. Believe me, I have made that mistake. And we've all done that. And I stand by the codicil that Good judgment is learned from mistakes. Mistakes are made by bad judgment. Good judgment is learned by screwing up. And if you don't screw up, you're never going to learn. You're never going to get any better. Brian, you've got your hand up.
Yep. So so on the idea of mistakes that we've made in the past, I've made a ton, by the way. The one that always stands out in my mind was there was an open summer dance here in Vancouver. It was a mainstream dance in downtown Vancouver at a place called Robson Square. And all it was a nice mainstream dance that was held every Tuesday night. And it was designed for a place for all of the dancers to come down and dance during the summer, because most dancing is shut down here in Vancouver. And so I went there, and I was a sort of a brand new teen caller, and I was in my late teens, I guess, probably 17 or 18 years old. And
this is only about 3 or 4 years ago then.
And my understanding of what dancers were able to dance, the context that I had was what my contemporary dancers could dance. And I came from a teen club that competed. And I like to say that, you know, the teen dancers who compete, that we're essentially training for the Olympics of square dancing. So we tend to know the calls a little better than everybody else. And so what I thought was simple choreography turns out wasn't simple choreography. And so the thing that just blew the entire floor away and had everybody looking up at me like I was an idiot. So I had to say that let's just do the setup. It's so from a corner box, have everybody pass through and then have the heads, or have the people that are facing out turn around. And then I would say, now 3/4 zoom. And so from there, oh, you're gonna do it. That's rough. So yeah, do a pass through and then have the heads you turn back. Nice. And so from this kind of position, I just called the 3/4 zoom. And yeah. Anyways, it walks into a right and left grand. And that's basically what I put them into. And there you go. And so that's the position I put them into. And I thought it was really neat. I thought it was really cool. And it goes to your story of, you know, not trying to impress everyone, but I honestly thought that was easy, because in my mind, that was easy. And so when I got there, I very quickly learned that kind of choreography isn't normal. The other thing that I notice from a lot of newer callers, and I'm going to say a lot of the newer gay callers, they're very good, but a lot of them are reading their material because that's what they're being taught to do. And the material that they tend to write, they're writing it for the gay dancers that they're dancing with. And those dancers are very, very good at all position dancing. And so they're able to handle that choreography. And then if they show up at some straight club or a regular club of some sort, they try to read their material, and all of a sudden they find out that their material is completely difficult for everybody on the floor, because those dancers aren't quite ready for all position dancing.
Yeah,
so
it's a very, very common error that newer callers make, is they think everybody dances the way they like to dance, or they're not so aware of formation management and standard position that it doesn't have that sense. I just wanted to look at what you called there for a second, Brian.
Yep.
3/4 zoom. Remember in this session I talked about fractionalization. If it's not one of those basic foundation fractions, stay the heck away from it if you're new, or even if you're experienced and you're calling to somebody for the first time. This is one of those classic examples. It's like cloverleaf to a right and left grand. You could have easily called zoom to your partner right and left grand, and they would have done that with absolutely no problem, done the 3/4 zoom, because you told them what to do. But it's the fact that you said 3/4 zoom. Now they've got to think, okay, a zoom is how far I go here, and now they're thinking that while they're trying to react at the same time, and you know, things like that. It's usually, I'd say probably about 70% of the time, it's something very, very small and innocuous that you will do as a new caller, that is going to break down the floor that you probably didn't even see it or think about it until it jumps out and bites you in the backside.
Now, of
Betsy,
course, as an older experienced caller now, I get away with a whole lot more stuff now than I did then.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Betsy, you
but
have your
that comes with experience.
Yeah, I had another example one time back when it was +1, +2. I'm calling for a club that was +1 in New York, Long Island, not Staten Island, which is a borough of New York City. Yeah, and I called. I was at least smart enough to figure this out this time. I called, swing through and the boys run and girls hinge and you have diamonds. And they all made little stars. And I said, oh, good. That means they cannot flip the diamond except from standard position. And since I did not remember what standard position for flip the diamond was, I never called it for the entire night. I got them in and out of diamonds other ways because I was afraid to call flip the diamond in case I chose the wrong setup.
And that's something that does come with judgment. You had something in mind: swing through, boys run, girls hinge. There's your diamond, but they closed into a star. What am I going to do here? The wise thing at that point, and this is why you prepare, and you prepare. Like I use fixed point modules. I call them fixed point: corner box, partner line, right hand box. Those are my fixed points that I know I can resolve from. I have something, I'll get out and I'll go back and take it back. I may have prepared a whole bunch of stuff for diamonds, but I'll take it back away from that and leave that the hell alone, because that's not what they can do, and that's not what I was hired to do.
Yeah, I think what I probably did the first time through, and I discovered it, I think what I probably did was diamonds circulate, girls hinge, and the couples circulate.
Yeah.
Because I knew that would work.
Yeah. I had one similar, and I said from that where they really closed in the diamonds because it was tight square, I said all the boys on the outside circulate one position while the very center girls trade, and then look at your diamond. Now they've established it instead of closing it up at the star. But you find ways to make it happen that the dancers will succeed. And that's, as you said, that's good judgment, comes from the mistakes learned from bad judgment. Yes, Mickey.
Yeah, I would like to add something to what Bob said about newbies or other callers taking notes. And sometimes I've got choreo developed, which I know they're going to write it down, that they're going to call me the next week or the week after. Because whatever they wrote down is not going to work, because they missed to write down what I did the tip before or 2 tips before to establish the ways and the confidence so it would work. So this is a most important thing. So yeah, this adds up to what Bob said.
Yeah, and that goes along the line of what I was saying with, if you call for I got you there, Bob. You call for another caller, or you call in a place where this is commonplace. That person that makes this commonplace has been working to set up their own success. They've learned how to do that. And then that goes into programming. If you're programming an evening, if I was going to do tag the line and cloverleaf was my theme for the evening, I'd start by doing tag the lines without the cloverleaf. Then I do the cloverleaf by itself. Then I do maybe a simple combination of tag the line and clover, and build up through the evening so that I can get to my success. This is what, again, this is good judgment. This is learned, this is experience, and goes into programming. And there's a lot more to it. For new callers, you don't get that advantage. You get the 1 tip. And that's why your first, second, third, and fourth figures are absolutely essential. Those first 4 figures should take you about halfway through that record if you've done it right.
And an important part is on the tag the line, just before you get to Bob, is to have a square through done by everybody having done it half sachet. If you got 4 girls in the center doing the square through, some of them will not feel comfy. And so this is another point you got to take care of before using it in the singing call or when building up that routine, right?
And you set yourself up for success. Bob.
Yeah, as a caller, I maybe have created this special get out, and I'm sure other callers have done it. that, just gives that dry punch to the floor, and the new caller hears it and says, "Oh, this was a great get out." What he doesn't know is you were training them to succeed into that get out before you ever delivered it. But what they write down is the get out, and they don't understand how to set it up to get to that point. And I think that goes back to something I'd said earlier about why didn't it work for me? And it's because we create, or at least in my case, I work to create success with my get out, and I build to it. And I don't deliver the get out at the beginning. That's the punch at the very end. An example of that, back when Cross Trail Through was a newer dancer, it was on the basic list. What was in one of the first 12 calls? I forget. But there was a call that appeared in the magazine, a series of calls appeared in Sets in Order, back in the days when they would give a name, not to so much the individual calls, but for the whole dance. And there was a routine called Bucket of Worms. And the basics of a bucket of worms, you did a cross trail through, separate around 2, which brought you home and you were half sashayed. Then you would repeat it and you'd be back home normal. And the whole thing was a bucket of worms was to build up to a point where you could call a cross trail through, separate around 2, while the sides cross trail through, separate around 2, while the heads cross trail through, separate. And you would call that. And to this day, I even use it advanced, because cross trail through is advanced. And as simple as it is, the floor just gets ecstatic at the end if they get through that, because they can't track anybody. Everybody's running all over the place, and there's no place of reference real strong to somebody standing there. And I like the way the ecstatic response I get from dancers, even advanced dancers, when they get through it, because I build them slowly into it. And then I says, and here's the final punch, and I go through that sequence. They scream when they resolve at home at the end, or do the Alaman left at the end. I have not, and I actually kind of got fired from a group for using it, even though I got that response from the group, because there was one person in the group that didn't like it. What can you say?
I put the definition, if anybody's interested, of bucket of worms in the chat. And cross trail through was 29 on the basic program.
Oh, 29. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it was in the first 30. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it dropped off, what was it, 83?
Somewhere.
83 or 85, I think it dropped off the list.
I never stopped using it. I would use it as a teach call. And like I said, because I love the experience of, I've got certain calls or certain sequences that I call that when I know at the end of that call, it's Yahoo, man. We did it. We did this incredible thing. And I get off, I get my pleasure. One of my life's pleasures is from a floor getting that excited about having gone through something.
I remember, I know there was a lot of discussion around cross trail through and cross trail in the very early 81, 82, because there was a scene called head two couples cross trail, you turn back and then, as opposed to head two couples cross trail through. And they were 2 different calls. Cross trail through was and then cross trail was passed through half sachet. And yet they both cross trail through had the same definition. It was just, there was that difference in use, and it created such a controversy, and then it disappeared off the list for some silly reason.
Well, to me, it was because of that discussion, and they blurred the definition.
Yeah.
So the definition had no standard ending point anymore. It said the ending point is dependent upon the next call. And that killed cross trail through, period. That's
Yeah.
what
And it
I
was,
think.
Yeah, Caller Lab did it with their wisdom. Yes.
but
Well,
that's
they
Yeah, on the
tried.
other hand,
They
on the other
try,
hand,
Bob.
so the dancers needed to know what was coming up to have the end information. Then they took it out of the mainstream and the plus program, put it in the A program. The first thing what they did is change the definition, and the way it is now, you could have put it back into the main basic or mainstream.
a lot of it, head two couples, cross trail through, and cloverleaf. That was the first move. Usually the first thing you got when you started learning mainstream, because cloverleaf being the first one, cross trail through and cloverleaf. But then cross trail through was always cross trail through to the corner, and it created such a problem with the blurring because what's the end point? Cross trail is pass through half sachet. Cross trail through is pass through and face your corner in that arcing turn. And of course, you can't do a cloverleaf from there and blah, 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 because this, and you had to go back and cross trail through and all that. No, it's not correct, Mickey. Believe me, it's not correct. But that was the way it's being perceived by the dancers. Wait a minute, because they were two separate things. But no, they were never two separate things. It's just that's the way it got used. It become common. And then somebody said, well, you need to tell the dancers where they have to go to end.
Having the heads to the right and left through, cross trail through, to the corner, make a right hand star. This was one common thing as well, right? Getting into stars.
I never heard that combination.
Yeah,
which is horrible for the dancer on the outside because they have to swing that loop way in. But
my contention at the time was that to the corner is just a separate call.
Yeah,
Through is the one that ends, back to back. But a lot of times the caller will give you something to do before you get there, then you just blend into that. So.
So many callers only used it to the corner. They never used it anywhere else. That we trained the dancers that it was only to the corner.
Right.
And what was ironic about it was we'd use cloverleaf to a right and left grand without finishing the movement. We'd use all these other things which had the very similar chop off with a directional call, meaning your ending spot is dependent on the next call. And you look at it and you go, well, why doesn't this work? And you're absolutely correct. It's because we as callers set the dancers up to fail, which bringing it back into the theme, cross trail through is one of those classic examples of where we would do something along that line for a brand new caller. If your caller you're calling to is cross trail and you're using your checkers and you do cross trail through and it's pass through half sachet and you want to do cross trail through and cloverleaf and they're used to cross trail through to the corner. I don't know if you can see my hands or not, but cross trail through the corner, you fail. Yet the caller before you may do this all the time because they're used to that person's calling. They don't have the confidence in you, and you don't have the confidence in the movement.
One of the things that happens a lot is when there's something really common like that, like cross trail through to the corner element left, which when I learned to dance, that was like the most common get out at the end of a sequence. That happened more than anything else. But what I think it happens with callers over time is they'll start to get casual in the way they say the call, and so you'll have people just saying cross trail Alaman left, and they'll leave out all the other words, and somebody will hear them do that, and then they'll pick that up. That's the way that things get. That's one way that things get blurry and murky, and then suddenly half the people don't know what's going on. Half the callers don't know what's going on.
Well, that's the nature of a folk activity.
Yeah. One of the things that's happening today, I see a lot of it. I've actually heard it on a couple of pieces of music, is with the plus movement, explode. Explode is a call. Explode right and left through cannot be done. Explode and right and left through can be done. That word and is a joiner. And to me, we don't say heads right and left through and square through. We say right and left through, square through. Two separate movements. Explode is a movement. If it's separated by a comma, it's a separate movement. And it's like if I say split the outside two, automatically dancers start separating, but it's not always a separate. Split the outside two and separate are two separate movements.
Yeah, just call split the outside two and trade by.
Yeah, and you see that, but we as callers are becoming as you say, it's a folk art, lazy, and I've seen this more and more. Explode square through, explode. You know, there was one that was explode the boat. Well, that was explode and load the boat. You know, but explode the boat became a, I think it was a quarterly way back. It was on the record, Thunder Road. Explode the boat.
It never became a quarterly.
It never became. I think it was somewhere up there, but it was released on that record, Thunder Road.
That could be.
But
it was a joke thing, you know. You first you call explode and load the boat, and then you say explode the boat again. You know, it's just wordplay with the dancers.
And the reason I brought it up is it goes along with what Chris was saying. We as callers train our dancers to us, but as a new caller, you hear something like that, and you, oh wow, that guy's great, or you know, look, I danced this dance with Al Stevens, and oh, I love this little sequence he did, and I try to be Al Stevens, and of course it doesn't work because I'm not Al Stevens, or I'm not Chris Stacy, or anybody else. Yet they can do it. Why can't I do it? Well, the reason
don't they have some guys use a thing for do the center part of load the boat? I forget the phrase that they used.
Well, there's a challenge concept, central, which means basically do the center's part of the call. So you say central load the boat. I don't know if people say that outside of challenge though.
There were some people who were doing Zoom dances who started, instead of saying do the center's part of whatever call it was, not a challenge, they were saying central, because they taught the people who were doing the Zoom dances that particular concept just so they could not use as many words.
One of the things that's come out of Zoom dances, there's a lot of callers that do Zoom dances, and you know, just to practice and whatnot, and they've learned some extremely bad habits about recognizing what a square does as compared to what a couple does. You know, we talked, I think, Yolanda, we had a conversation, something like this. There was a caller that you were working with, AC Ducey, I think it was, with two couple dancing is basically center straight, end straight. But when you get a full square and you call AC Ducey and expect that as a newer caller, well, that's because they were taught that. And it's little things like that that expand these concepts that you have to rein it in. But we as experienced callers need to make sure that our newer callers don't set the dancers up to fail with these kinds of examples. We need to do it correctly, and if we don't, we've lost it.
Roz?
I'd actually disagree with you on that, because I do Zoom dancing. Yolanda does Zoom dancing, and we work in two couples, but we also work with a full set, and we interchange in and out, and they'll use a click to say the others have gone, or poof, they've disappeared. So we'll be two couple, we'll go into a full square, we'll do dancing, we can do AC/DC in a full square in Zoom. And then click back in.
Yeah, I wasn't going to go into the whole expanse, because there's a whole theory. Somebody should actually write a manual about Zoom dancing and what click dancing is. That surprised me when I heard it the first time. What do? We do click dancing on Zoom. And I said, well, what is click dancing? I said, well, wow, that's when you have the phantoms and they come in and they come out and they do this and you dance the square, but then you dance two couple movements. But for other callers that have never been exposed to that, AC/DC with two couples is center straight, end straight. And they're doing it right because it's the end circulating the center, but they think that's what AC/DC is. And the first time they get into a square and two dancers cross that center line, it's a big surprise for them. And it's those kinds of things that you have to be aware of as a new caller, and most of them are, but some are not. And as somebody teaching this or expanding or critiquing, you've got to let people know that, yes, and as long as you're aware of it, like you're saying, Roz, and like Yolanda was saying, they do. I think you guys do the same thing. You do your promenades as if you're in a whole square, but you dance two couple choreography, that kind of stuff, where you're singing, you know, it's essentially the same kind of thing. You're aware of it, you set those parameters up for the dancers to succeed, and that is absolutely the right way of doing it. But picture somebody that's never done it before, they would have a problem with that.
The really bad thing, I guess, that would happen is if some caller thought they could do a heads up pair off or square through 4, pass through, so we have a trade by, and then say something like centers swing through, the ends cloverleaf, the centers do an AC-doocy. Thinking that if you have a wave that you can AC-doocy in it,
Yeah.
which you can't. That's strictly a two couples thing.
Yeah, it goes along the line. Those are the things that you would have to learn. One of the, and this is just going back to what Brian was saying with his 3/4 zoom, trying to get clever or fancy. One of the worst calls I ever heard at a mainstream dance, because the caller had a hard time because he only called plus and learned to call at plus, never learned to call basic and mainstream, was do a do si do, make an ocean wave, do the second half of spin the top. Which is, of course, fan the top. But couldn't figure out how to get the dancers to do it, but he called do the second half of spin the top. How would you as a dancer feel getting called something like that? Yolanda, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I think you took what I said previously out of context a little bit. It wasn't the Zoom situation. It was more that there were dancers that hadn't danced for a long time because of COVID. And so they had forgotten how to do certain moves.
Oh, no. I wasn't taking what you were saying out of context. It just reminded me, because it was a conversation I had as well. There's a lot of 4-couple movements that you can do with 2 couples. For instance, Ferris wheel, you'd hear the call Ferris wheel. And of course, on 2-couple dancing, that would end with the 2 couples facing, and then they would just move them together, and facing dancers do the right and left through, which of course would be completely inappropriate. But I've heard this kind of stuff going on Zoom. I just used the example of AC-doocy as a 2-couple call, which is actually a 4-couple call. I could have used Ferris wheel or anything. It was just that conversation that I had with you before reminded me of that as something I wanted to mention.
AC-doocy is a good example, because I've seen people many years ago, we certainly didn't have any computers then, get confused about that.
Yeah.
You don't even need to have Zoom to screw you up.
Look, with Zoom, we're very focused on the flagpole center. And when we're dancing Zoom, we usually put a tape across the floor so we know where the flagpole center is. So if you're doing Ferris wheel, you make sure you're on the correct side of that flagpole center.
Mhm.
Oh,
That's something
I
that
understand
even the whole time I've been dancing, I've hardly heard of flagpole center.
No, I'm going
until
back. It
mainly
was
Zoom.
actually a very, very, very experienced caller that was asked to call a Zoom session, and got up and called a Zoom and said, well, how do you dance this? And said, well, we dance with phantoms. And sometimes you got one dancer on the floor that's got 7 phantoms. You've got 2 couples dancing with, heads and sides. They've got phantoms, and yet they do 2-couple dancing. And it really, and this is a very, very experienced caller. I'm not going to mention his name because he was quite embarrassed, because he had a really, really hard time calling. And it was one of the things that he noticed is Ferris wheel was one of the examples. AC-doocy was one of the examples. Spin chain through was a hilarious one, because it became a spin the top somehow kind of thing with 2 couples. But it was just something that had been modified, that they modified into these 2-couple movements for success. But the 2 that really stick out are AC-doocy and Ferris wheel. If the caller is not knowing, and as you say, Rosa, and this is not your group or Yolanda's group or anything like that, because you guys set those parameters so the dancers know what to do. But picture a brand new caller, Betsy Gata is coming and she wants to learn how to call, and she sees you call Ferris wheel. Great. Oh, they can do a Ferris wheel. And what she sees on the screen is one couple facing another couple. So the next call she calls is right and left through to those 2 couples. And what happens is that first couple just steps forward and wheels around, and she's going, what the heck's going on? Those are the kinds of things I'm talking about, where we actually can, even with a full square, if we're teaching a new caller to do this, it can go, because they're not looking at it the same way you are. And from a dancer's perspective, they're not looking at it the same way you are. So take the time with that. And I know you do that with your group, Roz. You take the time with them, and you guys dance very, very well, as does Yolanda's group and a couple of the other ones. Yes, Roz.
Yeah, I don't actually call Zoom, I only dance it. But
Oh, okay.
the callers that call the Zoom do a wonderful job, and they're very switched on. It is an art. Any new callers, and any experienced caller that wants to call on Zoom, most of them will watch Zoom for a few times to see what's happening, because a lot of the callers will give hints to say you're in a two-face line, your line's facing out or whatever, to help the dancer know where they are. Because if you've got a solo dancer, and sometimes there's not even a couple together to call from, there might be a solo dancer. So it's a real art, and all those callers just do a wonderful job on Zoom. And if anyone hasn't seen square dancing on Zoom, I would suggest have a try, have a look, and just see what the callers do. They're just wonderful. And Betsy's done it.
I had a hard time with it. It was explained to me, never done it before, and hadn't actually watched it before. I was like, well, we just danced two couples. Okay, well, that's not a problem. I can do two couple calling. But it wasn't two couple calling, it was a whole square. And of course I went, okay, I'm just, just doing a guest tip and whatnot. And I just kept just two couples. And so I would just say, okay, heads do this, and then sides do this, and heads do this, and sides do this. And it was definitely not my greatest performance. I've never done it again. And I've never been asked to do it again, which is fine. But it's not that I couldn't do it, it's my perception of what was being expected. Oh, it's just like two couple calling. Oh, I can do that. That's easy enough. I've recorded a couple patter calls, a couple patter record with two couple calling. I've called two couples. I do that in Sicilian circle all the time. It's not the same. And you're right, Roz, it is an art.
Yeah, it depends. It depends on whether or not you're using all 8 dancers, or whether you are going to stick with just 2 couples, and you can do both. And I actually wrote stuff when I was calling on Zoom, and some of it I found very useful for me because I hadn't gotten back full squares of challenge C1 dancers. So I used my 2 couple Zoom material to call to live C1 dancers because they had 2 couples.
You confuse the heck out of them with box to nat, center straight, basics.
No, I called C1 calls.
I know, that's because basics too hard for
them.
Yeah. We've had this discussion many times. Which reminds me, Betsy, Mickey passed you a message at Caller Lab.
Yes, he did. He did pass the message, and I got the message, and I'm busier than a one-armed paper hanger right now.
No worries. I just thought I'd
calling my head off.
Yeah, I just thought I'd drop that less than subtle hint.
Yes. But you notice I haven't been here for a while. It had nothing to do with the message. It had to do with the fact that I was calling on Saturday nights.
No, I'm actually quite ecstatic because a lot of callers, like our numbers are down. I think we're hitting, at the maximum now, about 35 to come to these sessions every now and then. But it's good mainly because we're starting to get back into dancing and calling.
Yes.
Saturday night is busy nights for a lot of people. And depending on what it is, we may end up terminating these sessions after a while. We have been running now for just under 3 years. We've been recording for the last year now. I think this is session 94 or 95 that's actually been recorded. But it's a lot of material and a lot of good stuff out there. And it's like an entire caller school to the nth degree of material, but take it as it is. And that's why I like to have as many presenters with many different angles and different approaches. When we talked about resolution, or when we talked about, like Bob gave a session on how he looks at the chicken plucker compared to how others look at the chicken plucker and things like that, it opens up eyes to a lot of callers that will look at things very differently. And that's why I like to have different ways of looking things. Some callers are so set in their ways that no, my way is the only way. This is, you don't have to know this. You only have to know how to do this, and everything else flows from this. Yeah, to you it does, but maybe not to Yolanda, or maybe not to Hannah, or maybe not to Betsy. Different people have different ways of looking at it. And that's why it's so important that we share these, because we have different systems of calling, different ways of approaching it. And that's what these sessions, the value of them is. Mickey, you had your hand up, I think.
Yeah, I just would like to add something to cross trail through. And I think in the old days, now I have been around quite a while, but not as long. I think my grandpa told me No, but I think that cross trail through was meant to be when dancers were crossed.
Sorry, Mickey, I muted you just out of the
Okay.
grandpa.
I just smacked him.
Go ahead. I just did that as a joke. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, that when the dancers were crossed, they had the heads or the sides wheel around into a cross trail through and resolve the square. I think this was the most intention of cross trail through. Right. And then the other things were added as they got smarter, and they had to redefine, and callers were playing around. But I think the original intention was to get cross dancers back to their original corner.
I don't think
I
so,
don't know about
because
that,
cross
but
trail
Yeah.
through was in a lot of old time records, and it was just pass through half sachet and then do something. A lot of it was heads right and left through, roll away, or heads half sachet, pass through, cross trail through, and promenade outside till you get back home. Those kinds of things, and they were in a lot of old time nets, or head to couples cross trail, do you turn back, all those kinds of things were there long before I ever heard of, from the lines or heads wheel around cross trail through to the corner. I think it was there before.
an older caller told me, and I unfortunately I didn't totally follow what he was saying, so I can only pass along some vague words that I remember. But he was saying that a long time ago, there was a thing in the dance. I don't know if he really meant the dance as we're doing it. And he said it was there was a thing called crossing trails, and that the call came out of that. And he was then kind of saying, I remember when we didn't say cross trail through, it was just crossing trails and blah blah. So there's definitely something way back there. I'm not sure exactly what it was though.
It could have been, but my understanding, or the way I took it when I first learned it, just the name of it, cross trail through, was an X-shaped pass through. Is we're trying to pass through with the diagonal person at the same time, and what we had to do was right shoulders before we could complete it. And it was just a version of pass through, an X-shaped pass through. That's how I took it from the very beginning back in 1970.
Does anybody remember the singing called the Bumblebee Square, re-released on Wagon Wheel about long years ago?
I remember the name, not the
You had
choreo.
about a dozen terms maximum used in it. Jerry Story and Johnny Oxendine ran a series of, or they had set up for them a series of plus weekends over here. And at one of them, I tried calling this on the to the plus floor, and it caused quite a considerable amount of interest. But the figure included promenading a new girl, heads wheel around to a right and left through, cross trail back to an alley-man left.
Okay.
The ends of the resultant line do a quarter circle towards the middle. The centers do a 180-degree loop back round to meet on the outside, and that used to be part of the singing call setup, and we used to. It seemed to work.
Chris, the movement you were thinking of was trail through?
Yes, that's another tip. That's another
Well,
tip.
there's that, but no, the guy was definitely saying, and word to the wise, I can't ask the guy now because he's dead. So don't miss opportunities. Like I should have really pursued this one a little bit more when I was quizzing him. But he was definitely saying the words were crossing trails. No through anywhere in it.
Oh, okay.
Yes,
Could have
I
been a
think
local thing too. Well,
I think
ladies and gentlemen, oh, sorry, go ahead, Simon.
I was going to say I think the wording for the bumblebee square was the heads wheel around, right and left through, cross trail back to the corner, or cross trail back to an element left. So, anyway, it's one of my favourite singing calls that I've never got no opportunity to use these days.
Well, we can always resurrect the music for Flight of the Bumblebee and make it up.
Roz
I'm
wants to say something.
going to give Roz the last comment because my daughter and son have just come over to say Happy Mother's Day. And it is Mother's Day here in Australia. So I'm going to wish everybody a happy Mother's Day tomorrow. For those of you that's applicable, for all you guys that have forgotten that tomorrow is Mother's Day in the States, you still have time to zip out and grab a present. But for that, I'm going to give Roz the last comment here. And I think I do apologize for that. I can leave the session open, but I'm going to stop the recording now. I want to thank Mark and whatnot. And I will leave it open if you guys want to chat, but that will be the end of it. So, Roz, you had your hand up.
Yes, I've actually got a teaching question. On Friday night, I was having trouble with a dancer. Don't laugh, Scotty. And it was basically swing and promenade. He is not swinging and promenading quick enough to get home. And
well,
so you have
I
to
did
adjust.
tell you, Roz, that at the end of the dance, if it happens again, to take your stick and smack Scotty in the backside with it. He's going to have to learn sometime.
Well, actually, someone said, slap him on the wrist, because he was one of Scotty's dancers. But I mean, he has got 2 left feet, but he's also very stubborn that if you're trying to help him, he'll fight back more and go slower. So how do you deal with someone like that, or how do you deal with that situation to try and help him?
Yeah, the issue of a swing is always awkward. I believe you guys prefer to do the buzz step swing, which is sort of like the scooter shuffle swing, which is the most favorable and the easiest swing to do. But just get him to do a walk around, or from that, just say join hands, 2 hands, circle 3/4, girls turn back and roll into a promenade. Get them to do something where they're going around, where they actually have to go through that motion if you want. All the rest of the dancers will do it. With that guy, you can say, because he may have an absolutely valid reason why he doesn't want to swing, other than he just doesn't want to do it, or whatnot. And so you can create those kind of actions. At the beginning of this session, we had a discussion earlier, and every now and then you'll have one dancer. And sometimes, as I said with the session I did with Dawn in conflict resolution, sometimes people are just dicks, and every now and then you're going to get one of those. Do the best you can. That's really all the advice I can give you on that.
I mean, I could
Mickey, you had a comment to help Roz?
Yeah.
Hello, Hannah.
On some of my older people, they don't want to swing because they kind of feel dizzy, or if they can't get quick enough around, and they just take the partner in promenade. So just don't let them do the swing, but the promenade. But I tell them if they leave out the swing, then they should not rush and hurry the others, but just wait for 2 beats and then get into the promenade. And don't force the swing, because if he's slow and if he doesn't want to do it, it's obviously going to be a problem to get him home in time, so they're ready for the next routine, for the next figure or whatever. So I'd rather have him not swing, but take the girl and promenade.
Yeah, the only thing that irritates me to no end, and I really mean, it just sets me off, is the people who won't swing, but if you call do-sa-do to an ocean wave, they do a Highland fling. You've seen them.
Yep.
When I was learning, I remember I was very intimidated about swing, and I just wouldn't do it. It looked hard. I was going to have to get a hold of this girl, and I didn't really know what to do, and I just was having none of it.
Yeah, but
basically.
then you turned 12 and girls became interesting, Chris.
No, they were very interesting. That's why I didn't want to. That was my problem. It's like I don't want to mess this up, so I'm just not going to do it. So for many weeks into the course, in every singing call, it'd be swing your partner, and or whoever the corner, whatever. When I got there, and I just wouldn't do it. And the girl would be like, swing me, and I'd be like, she'd be like, swing me, and I'm like, well, it's too late now, promenade.
Like I said, there are lots of different answers, lots of different avenues that you can approach. One of them is if it's a Heidi Ho, you may not have a reason, or you may have a reason not to swing, or you can make it just known that some people don't like to swing. If you don't like to swing, just let them know beforehand that you don't like to swing. And you can say that we used to have a sash or a badge or thing like that. He might have one of those, or he might just be one of those people that likes to do it. But I would just make that generalized statement. Hey, we've got a few people here that don't like to swing. So if you don't like to swing in your square, just let everybody know beforehand. And suddenly, oh, was that directed at me? Well, no, it was directed at a whole bunch. That was directed at the whole floor. Finding the right approach is always difficult. But if it's just because he's just being that person, he will swing with some and not with others. Chances are the guy's just being a dick. Excuse my language, but it does happen, and there are people like that. You deal with it the best you can. And you can call things like do a do-side-do, 1.5, or you can meet your partner, touch a quarter, boys run, partner trade, and a little bit more, and do things that are going to make this guy do whatever it is you want to do. I found that circle 4 3/4, let the girl roll out and promenade has the same timing as a walk around swing, and it flows just as well.
The way they eventually got me to do it was just some of the girls kidnapped me and dragged me out in the hall and said, look, loser, you're going to learn to swing. So, and showed me how to do it. But but to be too serious about what to do about that problem dancer, it's one of those communication things where what you want to do is figure out how you can get this guy, assuming that he's just not going to be obstinate and just going to be a dick. But maybe there's some kind of an issue there. He doesn't want to do it for whatever reason. It's not comfortable. He's not sure how to do it, whatever. To get him, you got to talk to the guy, and you got to somehow figure out what the strategy is for communicating with this guy. Maybe he wouldn't like you or anybody talking to him when other people are around, or he might feel singled out, or whatever the difficulty is there. That might make somebody react in a really negative way. You just might kind of want to figure out some kind of a trick, basically. Maybe it needs to be talked to in a way where it's not obvious that that you're talking to him, or maybe you just need a different approach in the language to because some people are argumentative in the quirky kind of weird way that it's just weird. But you're gonna have to just figure this guy out somehow, and it could be all kinds of different things.
Just to let everybody know, I've made Yolanda the host. By all means, I do not want to curb this discussion, because this is where a lot of the issues do come in, that hey, something happened to me, or I can share this experience that people can learn with. But I have to get going. I've made Yolanda the host, but by all means, carry on and enjoy. And to everybody else, happy Mother's Day tomorrow to all you mothers. And to all you mothers that forgot that tomorrow is Mother's Day, you better go out and buy a Mother's Day present for Mother. Otherwise, we won't be able to see you here next time.
Enjoy your family, Mel.
Take care,
Thank
everybody.
you, Mel.
Yes.
I have a question for those of you who call advanced. Would you think that 3/4 Zoom would be expected to be able to be done in advance without a walkthrough, or would it require the walkthrough? Would it be appropriate?
Well, if it is for a get out to a right and left grand, I think they can handle it. If it's to have them into a static formation and work on with different other things, then I probably would have a heartache with it, or a headache with it. But
It's going to totally depend on if they've ever heard even half Zoom, because a lot of a lot of dancers have never even heard that. So if you said 3/4 Zoom, I mean, they would just.
Yeah, well, to me, half Zoom is almost obligated to be taught at advanced because of the definition of cast a shadow is the ends of the line to half a zoom.
Right.
So I expect my dancers to understand what a half a zoom is. I'm going to use the 3/4 zoom. It's no big deal to teach it, but I guess what I'm hearing is you wouldn't call it at a guest situation.
Oh.
I wouldn't just shoot it out there without knowing the people.
Yeah, because I'm imagining calling a three from a double pass through, 3/4 zoom, centers pass through, split square through, or whatever. And yeah, there's things that I could do with that, and they're all spinning in my mind right now.
I mean, a 3/4 zoom is about like a clover leaf for the leaders, right?
Yeah. What?
Similar action, right? I've got one more thing to Ross to add. If you're talking to that guy, and if you make it kind of official or whatever, then I would not talk with him just on a 2x2 base, but maybe have a club officer come with you. If you're the caller, and have a club official coming with you, because then it cannot be put away that like you would be picking on him.
Right.
Like it would be a kind of a more official type thing, and try to convince him or ask what is the problem or whatever. But you should not do this discussion by yourself, because he may put it away that you as a caller are picking on him, and then he's kind of in a role as a victim, and this can be difficult for group development.
Let me give you a little bit of a background on this bloke. He came along, he started with me in a learner's class, and then later he moved on down to Roz's area. He came along with his wife, and his wife wanted to learn square dancing. And I guess he came along under a reluctant disposition, would be the word to say, and he was vowed and determined that he was not going to dance. Well, of course, she got him up, and we got him up. And after probably about 6-7 weeks, I think it finally dawned on him that his wife was going to dance. So at that point, he decided, well, I'm going to get drug along here every bloody week anyway. I guess I'll learn to dance. But he has the attitude that what he's doing is right. It doesn't matter what everybody else is doing. What he's doing is right. And about that stage, that's when they moved down to where Roz's. And of course, his wife still wants to dance, and she's not a bad little dancer. But you want to take a lump of 4x2 and beat him around the bloody ears with it.
I've been so lucky.
Improved a bit, but if he makes a mistake, it's not him, that's his wife. Oh, Audrey's doing it wrong all the time.
Then you should split him up. Have him in the one square.
Oh, we do.
They are split up.
We've only got one set though, but we split them up as partners. That's as far as we can get them apart.
But the other thing is maybe to talk with his wife and make her talk with him, and so if you don't act proper, then whatever.
Male, masculine pig.
Yeah, I am going to have a talk to him, but I'm going to try and work it. Like, I know you're a very intelligent man, and try and build him up and maybe work it on that way. To say, like, I'm not calling you stupid, and I'm doing this to help. And look, there's a dance next Saturday, and he's going to go to that dance with the learners, and he's going to struggle like hell. So if I could at least get him to swing and promenade and get home in time, he's got a bit of a chance of dancing without breaking the sets down next week. I mean, I'm adjusting all the time when he's not home, but yeah, he's very stubborn. Yeah. And he thinks he knows everything about everything, but he has found out since that he doesn't know everything about square dancing. So he has mellowed a bit since Scotty had him. So, but he needs to mellow a lot more. So. Thanks, Scotty.
I wonder if Hannah has any question for a friend.
No, not really.
That really started a discussion that time.
Yeah, it did.
I've been so lucky.
Any news from Russia?